Hi, this is Anil Jacob. This is Universal Principles of Design, and in this video, the Pareto Principle. The Pareto Principle, or how to achieve more by focusing on less. In the early 1900s, an Italian economist by the name of Vilfredo Pareto was researching income distribution. He observed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And after some additional analysis, he realized this distribution described not only wealth in Italy, but in all countries, and that astonishingly, a large complex systems generally. He repeated the experiment and even discovered that 80% of the pears from his garden came from 20% of the pear pods. This phenomenon is commonly called the 80-20 rule, but is also known as the Pareto principle and the law of the vital few. It states that in any large complex system, a large percentage of the effects are caused by a small percentage of the variables. 80% of the website usage involves 20% of its content, or 80% of a town's traffic is on 20% of its road. 80% of a company's profit comes from 20% of its customers. 80% of your productivity comes from 20% of your activity. Or again, 80% of system failures are caused by 20% of the components. The implication of this principle to designers are profound. For example, in redesigning a website, the 80-20 rule could mean you develop and refine the most used 20% and potentially cut off at least or ignore the remaining 80%. The idea is that focusing on the critical 20% lets you make a high impact for a low cost, whereas focusing on the non-critical 80% lets you, at best, make a low impact at a high cost. In fact, if you look at the history of innovation, many breakthrough product designs result from the unwitting application of the 80-20 rule. I say unwitting because the designers and engineers involved usually intuited the way to its application or implemented it by accident without any formal knowledge of the principle. For example, the revolutionary design of the Sony Walkman was realized by focusing on the critical 20% of what attracted customers, the ability to take and listen to the personal music. In cutting what was considered essential functionality at that time, the AM/FM radio, or the external speakers, or a record function, the design was so controversial within Sony that the president Akio Morita had to offer up his resignation to get the engineers to give the product a first shot. Morita declared that if Sony could not sell 30,000 units, he would step down. Of course, Sony sold well more than 30,000 and rest is history. I like to think of the critical 20% as a big lever. It lets you make a big impact with little effort. And the 80% is like a small lever. Making even a small impact is really hard work. Among all the tools in the designer's toolbox, this is one of the most powerful principles. The key is to begin by asking the right question. What is the critical 20% of the design that drives 80% of the effort? Once you identify that critical 20%, it is easier to get people aligned to where to focus time and resources. When applying the 80-20 rule, note the numbers do not always break down precisely to 80-20. 80-20 is just a rule of thumb. It could be 70-30, 90-10 and so on. The specific breakdown is not important. What is important is that a small number of variables drives the bulk of the performance. So, whether you use your knowledge of the 80-20 rule to prioritize features for the next great products, or troubleshoot bugs in your software, or to increase your personal productivity, remember, when it comes to improving performance, the best way to achieve more is to focus on less.